I'm John. I'm a former correctional officer. Luckily, joining me today is going to be someone who lends a lot of credibility and credulity, two for the price of one, to this show. Allie Siebert. She's the host of Allie in the Archives. It was my pleasure to be her producer during the entire run of her series up until the present day, until I was summarily fired without even being given a chance to make a case for myself. Allie's specialty is telling true crime stories or other true stories that dominated the headlines in their day, but they have since been lost to memory. A historian, a researcher, she's also written several books, most recent one of which is titled Bloodstain, Exploring Michigan's Darkest Murders Forgotten by Time, which you can find on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Allie is also a resolute liberal. She has Fidel Castro tattooed on her shoulder. She believes all criminals should be set free and all cops should be placed immediately on death row. She is here today to talk about Jackson State Prison in Michigan, nearby her, which opened in 1839. Most of you who know me best know that I love me a good old-fashioned 19th century prison. Allie, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
Hi. Thank you for that really, really nice intro.
You're
It was
welcome.
all true.
It was, of course, it was all true.
Mhm.
How do you get to be a published author? You know, most people are not calling me back. I don't know how to do things. How do you become a researcher, a historian? How did you get to be where you are?
Um, I like to say that the only way to do what I'm doing is to be incredibly nosy and annoying. And I do both of those really well. So that's kind of why I've gotten to where I've gotten. I started with I used to be a teacher. I taught second grade and first grade and all of those things, and I loved it, loved it, loved it. But um, when we moved to this old house here, I live in Michigan. When we moved to this old house here, I became completely obsessed with learning about the history of it and the people who lived here, and it just sort of snowballed from there. And I decided researching old houses wasn't weird enough, so I added true crime to it and murders. And so now what I do is I research old cases and I write about them and I talk about them, and it's really fun.
And you also have, is it I don't want to marginalize it by saying it's a side gig, I guess, but you also do histories of other buildings that people come to you and request research?
Yeah, so I have a company called Household History. It's just me. There's nobody else, but
For tax purposes.
um so what I do is people will come to me with whether it's, their house or this old mill down the street or this building that they lived in when they were a kid or whatever it may be, and they have me research it. And I do it in a number of different formats. So if you're really feeling super interested in what the building has to offer, I do like full books. So it's everything from what the land was before the house even existed or whatever it is, and then all the way up to present day. Everybody who's ever lived there, any changes that happened, where their lives took them. I do a full deep dive because I'm an obsessive sort of person, and that's what I do. But then I also do little mini ones. So it's just like a little PDF, couple pages, and it's the same thing, but it's just newspaper articles and stuff that I can pull so that you get an idea of the history of it without having to shell out an arm and a leg.
I would prefer to buy the leather-bound volumes. What's your favorite old-timey building? You said mentioned a mill, but what about like castle? You know, something with parapets on it. Do you have a favorite? What's your favorite building you've ever found?
So I'm this is a really good question. I would love to say it's a castle, but I'm a sucker for American history and we don't really have castles here. Um so
Our history is the best. That makes sense to me.
it is. I think we mean that in different ways, but sure. Um, I I don't know. I love an old fort, you know?
Have you ever been to? There's a fort nearby where I lived called Fort Monroe in Virginia, and it's where the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, was held after the war was over. It's an army
Oh,
fort.
really?
It's right on the bluffs. It's right on the water. But I've been in his jail cell where we held the president of the Confederacy. It's very, very cool. Um,
Wow.
they have tunnels that you have to drive through to get inside, but obviously they were built, you know, 100 years before the car was even a dream. And so like you drive through and it's like completely dark because there's no overhead lights and there's just bricks on either side of your car as you're traveling through. And you have to get through that wall to get to the other side. So lots of history where I'm from. If you've never been to Virginia, goes all the way back to 1607 with Williamsburg and all that. So in fourth grade, when I had to learn state history, it was a lot. Now that I live out west and state history only goes to like the 1970s, that would have been a lot easier for me to learn as a fourth grader. But we're here to talk about some of your state history as well in the form of Jackson State Prison. That's where your interests and mine would overlap. What can you tell me off the cuff about it? I do have some pictures. You shared a recent pictures from a recent visit. I could dive into those, or you can talk about it. But go ahead.
Okay, so Jackson Prison was built in 1842, and it was this huge, large 20-acre complex, big walls around it, and even way back then in 1842 when it was first built, they struggled with a ton of overcrowding issues. Think about it, it's mid-1800s, so there's no heat, there's no air conditioning. It's this big building with way too many people stuck in it. So there's issues with like hygiene and safety in that regard. The prison in 1879, a couple decades later, had gone up to 835 inmates. And at this point, this meant that 150 prisoners were stuck sleeping in the corridors of the prison. They quite literally did not have enough space for these people, which is insane. The cells themselves were horrifically small, 7 feet long by 3 1/3 foot wide, 6.5 feet tall.
Were they
And again,
were they typically single occupancy? I guess the reason why I ask is looking at these pictures where you've got people sleeping on what we would call flag, uh,
mm,
basically ground floor. The occupancy of a cell determines a lot about that person's stay. Like double occupancy is normal, but in the federal prison, um, if you have three to a cell, first of all, there's no room to do anything in there. But it would mean that you would be allowed to go outside for all three rec periods in a day. Do
hmm,
you know if they were normally with just single occupancy or double or?
I don't know for sure, to be honest. Part of me thinks that there were several in a cell, at least in general population.
It has to have happened because before you change your whole approach to housing people, especially when you're going to go to one which is less secure, which is having people just sleeping in beds where they can get up and assault each other or coordinate a riot in the middle of the night where all of a sudden you have 50 inmates who are not in a cell, which makes them, by the way, also much harder to count. There has to have been a breaking point where they decided we're going to have to move people out of the cells and onto the floor. So I imagine at some point it was very, very crowded. There's also something about state and federal prisons that's different than county, at least in the modern context. Where I worked was a prison like this. I like to call it a Shawshank class prison because it's what we're all familiar with from the movie. You've seen Shawshank, right?
No,
Oh my God.
I
Anyway,
haven't seen most movies.
Shawshank is a must. Before you return to the show, you must see Shawshank. But so modern prison occupancy is different than counties in the modern era. A county prison can fill up and they could say, we're full. We don't have any more room for anyone. You're going to have to take them to a facility in another county. And then they debit the county that's billeting them there. State prison, I worked at the only one we had. So if you have a male offender who's convicted of a felony, he's coming here. And as you can well imagine, the course of human affairs, nefarious and otherwise, doesn't bother to check in with me to see if I have room. So they're going to go out there and they're going to commit their crimes and they're going to be caught. Hopefully, the smart ones are not going to, but the dumb ones are going to get caught and convicted and sent to me. Well, I have to put them up. I can't say there's no room at the inn. I can't say they have to be put somewhere else. So we didn't have a vacancy limit. There was no maximum limit, but I can understand a facility like this, particularly since Michiganders, bunch of scofflaws, bit of a scam. I'm not surprised that the prison filled up the way that it did.
Michigan's got a lot of crime going on, and I don't know why, but there's, you Google. So when I do my research, I use like a lot of newspaper archives. They're really great because you can go through and you can go to the website and you type in whatever you want, and then all the newspapers that have been digitized from 1700 on come up with whatever keyword you put in. And it's not because of my location. It's literally like if I type in like bizarre murder, half of the results are from Michigan. So I don't know what's going on here, but it's very dangerous.
I'm tracking crime across Florida on my other podcast that I do. It seems like every week we will just do whatever's trending algorithmically because we want to ride that wave and get attention. It's all Florida stuff every week. So it's possible that Michigan dominated 19th and 20th century crime, but now there's a new state in town. And Florida actually didn't used to be that populated. Before World War II, Florida was a very, very rural and depopulated state, and now a lot of people live there. Maybe a lot of Michiganders moved to Florida. So that could be part of the reason. But I'm going to ask you a general research question that is apropos of nothing, if you don't mind.
I'm ready.
I've spent some time in libraries. I've spent enough time to be unwelcome there. Well, there, in more than one, my favorite thing is microfiche. You telling me you're reading digitized newspapers. Have you ever had to hurt your eyes for hours reading microfiche like me?
I love microfiche. I think it's really cool. I don't get to use it a ton because I don't have to. And it's way easier to do research from the comfort of my house than it is to go to a library. But I do think it's cool. I've used it a couple times because not all newspapers in the world are digitized. But I think it's fun. The librarians get really annoyed, though, when you say, "Hey, I'm here to look at this," and they have to set it all up, and they are not thrilled.
That is their job.
They don't like it, okay?
I'm pissed off every time 911 rings. What do you want? But I still do it. You know what I mean?
Well, they do it too. They just aren't happy about it.
I know about unhappy librarians. Okay, our paths have crossed every single time. What was interesting to me was the chow hall, having everyone eating in long lines. I would guess that what's not visible in this picture is what we had in our chow hall, and that is we had a catwalk that was only accessible from a door that led outside the prison. Do you know why it was a catwalk would go to a door from outside the prison and above where everyone ate?
No.
Because the person who would stand up in that catwalk had a gun. You cannot bring a gun inside a secure facility because if someone takes that gun away, then it's in no sense is it a prison anymore. Now it's just a murder fest, right? That's a different change from away from prison. It's murder fest. So, but I would guess somewhere in this picture that there's at least a port or something from the outside, because the dining hall is one of the most dangerous areas of the prison. People settle their beefs here. They wait all day for two reasons. Number one, it's where they can gather in numbers, but it's also where scaredy cats go, because they know that officers are going to be there. So if they've been instructed to take out a hit on someone by their shot collar, or if they are getting shaken down or hassled, bullied in the living quarters or the cell hall, this is a place where they can go and pick a fight with someone, and before retaliation can occur, they can be rescued by officers separating them. But
that's interesting.
The beefs that mean it though, the ones where they for sure want to kill a guy, it's actually all coming and going from the chow hall. That's the most dangerous time. It's what we would call a ring out. They would ring the bell and doors would open automatically, and inmates would come out of the cell and they would go to either the rec yard or to work or to sick call or to the dining hall. But it's when you have that mass release that they know that they can generate the most chaos. And I don't know if you've ever been to prison. As a Michigander, I think it's better than likely that you possibly have served at least 4 years in a women's correctional facility. But
Yeah, I just got out actually.
I know you did. The prisoners really run the place. Like the officers are in charge, but at any time that the inmates choose to collectively or in a large enough group to simply take over, they are now the boss of you. It's a total Captain Phillips situation. I'm the boss of you now. Your little uniform and your little can of pepper spray doesn't really do much if they want to overwhelm you. So I guess I just wonder, what's tastefully admitted from this photo, and it could have been that an officer with a gun. What are we looking at here? Chair factory. This is something that's interesting to me because we also had prison industries where I was at. We had binding and, of course, license plate making. But what do we see here?
Yeah, so this is the chair factory. Jackson Prison had a number of different like working areas. I know that they made clothes, chairs, obviously, a lot of woodworking. And this was one of the places where the folks would come and spend their days. I know too that in Jackson, one of the rules was that they couldn't talk to each other. So it's horrifying to me to imagine the silence in a place like that, especially when it's just overtaken by, you know, the sounds of everything else. So like in that room, I'm sure it's very loud, but the fact that there's no talking is spooky.
On one of our more recent episodes, we talked about a 19th century prison in Australia where if you go to what I would refer to as disciplinary segregation, but the prison within the prison, when you get arrested and go to super jail, essentially for being bad at prison. They have you in a cell where the rules of the cell are posted in your cell. You're not allowed to talk, and coming and going from your cell, and while you're at work, you have to wear a hood that obscures your identity. This keeps anyone from bonding with you, from seeing like you can't make friends. You don't see someone you know. You don't take any comfort in knowing that like someone that you might know is also doing time on the block or something. This is also to discourage you from, being in your cell and shouting down because you know that they're down there. Something that happens every day all the time is inmates talking to each other on a block, and just very harsh, very cruel.
Mm.
Circling back to your heart goes out to them. They are bad men. But going back to the prison industries, I wonder if this was very desirable to work to have. Work is some is preferred and some others are not. We did some metal manufacturing, so we would machine parts and things like that, and the inmates would actually make a decent living wage. I'm talking like $15 an hour. On the outside, this skilled labor would probably bring them like $60 an hour, but on the inside, obviously, they're able to control wages. And so you say to yourself, well, someone who can weld making $15 an hour, this is a crime. Well, first of all, it lowers prices for those goods that are going out into the community. So we also did an episode once called Hear Me Out Slavery, but it was about how most of our food production in this country does come from radically underpaid labor. And you can feel good or bad about that, Allie, as I'm sure you will differ from me. I say more, you probably say less, but I wonder if working in the chair factory was good. It was good work because maybe they wanted to work there. Maybe they were being paid higher wages as more skilled laborers to make fine furniture as opposed to pressing license plates or working in the kitchen. The inmates who typically do well, the ones who are just wanting to do their time and get done with it, or just want to do their time because they're on life, will typically be well behaved, and they will aspire to and eventually are granted jobs in which they're, obviously you think about an inmate welding, he's got access to equipment that he could hurt people with. Well, it takes a while to establish that trust and get there. And it might have been the same way
I think you're totally right. I think it was like a system where you kinda had to move up the ranks. In Jackson, they did get to earn wages even way back in the 1800s when this was all kinda at its height. They were earning money for the work that they were doing. It is interesting to me, though, that, there's another prison in Michigan. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was originally created as a site for it's Ionia Prison for the Criminally Insane is
That's a good
the
name for a prison. I like that.
yeah, thank you. That's the full title, and it was set up specifically because Jackson was so overcrowded, and then also it goes hand in hand with the fact that the treatment of prisoners in Jackson was quite literally making them go nuts, and so a lot of times they would ship prisoners from Jackson to Ionia, and Ionia was set up as a way to they marketed it as a lot of, like, "Come here and you'll be re rejuvenated and hospitalized, and it's because your brains aren't working correctly, so we need to do therapy," but I'm sure that you can imagine that the conditions were also
Right.
horrific, if not worse than Jackson. At Jackson, they were paid. In Ionia, which was supposed to cater to people who were mentally unfit for general prison, the wages that these people would have earned doing the jobs that it's the same jobs that they were doing at Jackson, went back into the facility instead, which I think is despicable, honestly.
It is despicable, and even though we don't have asylums like this one anymore, vulnerable people are still being exploited all the time. Did you want me to show the map now or move on to other pictures?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
no, that's good.
Here's the map that you sent me. What are we looking at here?
So this is late 1800s Jackson Prison. These maps are called Sanborn maps. They were essentially used to determine, what buildings are made of so that they could document for, like, fire and emergency purposes. They call them fire maps.
Oh,
So
okay.
here, it's just an aerial view of what the prison looked like, and you can see just the different wings of it, kind of where the cafeteria was and the cells were, the working rooms were, the school was, because they had a school here, and a lot of times, especially in the 1800s, early 1900s, and onwards even, people were coming in who didn't know how to read, they didn't know how to write. There was a gentleman who came in through the Jackson prison who was considered pretty radical for his time, and he was very interested in a lot of reform and providing outlets for prisoners and education for prisoners. So the school was kind of a big deal. From my research, it doesn't sound like a lot of the uh, the folks who were in there really wanted to visit the school. There's a quote. This guy who did all of this reform, his diary, his night watchman diary has been published, so you can read all of his entries about certain criminals and everything. There's one guy, his name was Matt Fitch, and he he was sentenced there in 1879 to solitary confinement after he killed his wife and child. His story is really interesting, actually, but I won't bore you with the details. He was sentenced to solitary, and then he's actually mentioned in this book from the Night Watchman, and I'm gonna read you the quote because I love a direct quote. It says, "I report number 2255 Fitch for refusing to attend school. He's determined not to go, but I believe a touch of the bat might change his mind in this regard. For a man who can neither read nor write, he is singularly obstinate." And I think it kinda illustrates the idea that this guy, because at the time he was considered exceptionally uh, out there, far left leaning in a lot of his beliefs and wanting to reform the prisons, but he's still saying, well, he's not going to go to school. So
I'm going to beat him.
yeah, but I think that kind of juxtaposition is really interesting.
That is, and it just goes to show you touchy feely. Hug a thug mentality is what we would call it. How that's changed over the years. That the hug a thug type still embraced corporal punishment. I like this map. It resembles my own. If you look at the bottom, that square is probably the lobby or the entrance foyer. And then you almost look at like an octagon that goes off to opposite wings. We called that the rotunda. Then you would have an east wing or a west wing. And then it would go off like, I could see one of these being the kitchen area, the infirmary, the outbuildings, probably more likely the schools and the industries and the segregated units. So it's just a rearrangement of the prison that I worked at, to be honest with you. Any other thoughts on the fire map?
No, that's about it. You can find these maps. These are all free. You can find them on the Library of Congress, and they come in much better quality, so you can actually read what the things say.
I think it's terrible you did that to yourself. You should have advised people that you could supply them with copies for a moderate fee. Already did the chair factory. Is this what the space looks like today? You said that it's being reused as something else.
It is. So the building still stands, the main building, actually. It's been completely renovated into an apartment complex,
Oh,
which is an interesting choice.
would love to live
Uh,
in prison.
right? Doesn't that sound so cozy? Um, I visited there recently, like a year ago, because again, it's an apartment building, but a lot of it is still set up very similar to what it would have been like then. I mean, obviously there aren't cells or anything like that, but you can still see a lot of the footprints of what used to be there. The apartment units are huge in that the ceilings are really, really tall. The windows on the building are still the original windows. So, in your apartment, you've got these huge floor to ceiling windows, and you can see on the ceiling kind of where the room had been divided for what would have been cells. And honestly, to me, that's a horrifying thought because think of all of the energy that was in there.
Energy,
It
energy is
people weren't thrilled to be there.
yeah. Energy in a space is real. Like we could get into the paranormal or things like that, and I've got stories that you could believe or disbelieve, but energy is real. They could try to sell this to me as a picture window as much as they want. I'm going to understand that the reason why these windows are so tall is because we probably had tiers in here at some point, and it was stacked high, and it was a window for many people to use, and they probably couldn't see anything out of it. Go ahead.
Correct. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe. And even now, I mean, I don't know, it's been 30, 40 years that this has been an apartment complex. Don't quote me on that, but it's been a while. And when you go in there, you can still feel it feels suffocating. And
I know
I
that.
went in, yeah, yeah. The energy is just off, and it feels dark and just not. It's not where I would want to spend any time, let alone live. And I'm totally not judging anybody who lives there. They love it, so good
I
on you.
Yeah, good for you if you're making the most out of it. Do you get the feeling? I don't know if you ever had this feeling of a locked door behind you.
Mm, yeah, I
That's
could see that.
that was something that we felt acutely even as officers. Is when you come in and then you're walking through a sally port, a set of locked doors. When that second door locks,
Hmm.
um, I don't know. This is a little bit maybe overwrought, but I was in prison a long time. And I was there long enough. My combined work hours were such that I may as well have committed a burglary for the amount of time that I was there. And being in that environment, not only being around the negativity of the inmates and the negativity of the staff, being inside that negative space, um, and the feeling of being locked in, knowing that if something bad happens, you can't get out, and that your time to be rescued by somebody is non-existent. And the idea that when I get dressed in the morning and I think about going to work, am I going to be taken hostage today? That hangs over you all the time. Um, it's a tremendous negativity that, frankly, I guess destroyed my life. And I can't imagine just going back, even to do a tour to this day. It would make me uncomfortable even to be there. So I can't imagine the places that I have worked being converted into anything other than a museum.
Okay, so this is in that big room that we just looked at. It's this is it's for demonstration purposes, obviously. I mean, you can see the cardboard cutout of that lovely gentleman there. But this is s it's a demonstration of what the cells would have looked like. And the guy back there, he's wearing the black and white stripes, which was mandatory, that was part of their uniforms, which would be washed, I believe, once a month, so you can imagine what that would be like.
Prison has
Um,
the worst smells, even in the modern era. I can't imagine what it would be like back then. Go ahead.
exactly. And you can see that that's not a ton of space there. Imagine the vermin, the insects, the everything. They had a waste bucket that would be emptied once a day, and that was it. And again, there's no heating, there's no air conditioning. It's either going to be horribly hot or horribly cold. It's going to smell terrible. And no, you can't talk to the people around you. But I mean, this place made people go crazy. Like, people lost their minds. And there's stories of these men just screaming. And that's what you would hear all day and all night. Or there's one particularly famous inmate in the Jackson prison who was nicknamed the Crow because at night he would just make crow sounds, and it would be so loud, it would just echo through the whole building. And just the idea of being stuck in this tiny, tiny little space with all of that sensory input and that sound in your ears is I think it would make any reasonable person go insane.
I listened to the screams quite a bit. I worked on a unit that held death row. It held disciplinary segregation, meaning the worst of the worst guys, the guys that were incorrigible, the guys whose behavior we really couldn't control. So they were there for our safety, as I guess, as well as theirs. Even though I've seen them do things to themselves that would make you shudder. But also the very acutely mentally ill and uh, screaming, kicking on doors all night long. Um, the inmates who are just merely criminal to screaming at them to shut up and threatening them all night. And um, yeah, I could understand where even if you go into a place like this and you're fairly well put together, if you've got to spend any amount of time there. I mean, I've talked about it before. I think it was episode, I don't know, 16 or something, the high cost of being a CEO. But I talked about how I lost a great deal of my mental health, and it was definitely true for them too. And we talk these days about rehabilitation of the criminal justice system and of prisons, which I'm sure you're in favor of, and I'm a skeptic of. But is it even on the table? Are we even talking about rehabilitating people when you send them to a place like this?
That's a great question. The guy I mentioned earlier who came in and was doing all of that reform and rehabilitation, he had some really great, I'm sure you would consider them, questionable, um,
I like
techniques.
well-behaved inmates, and I like reduced recidivism, right? If you can believe that.
There you go. So, his whole thing was it aside from also leaning into the punishment side of things, he, I think, genuinely did want the best for these people. He wanted them to improve. I think he had a heart, there's one story of this guy, I believe they called him the Bear. He was this very large man, and he was scary in that he really didn't hesitate to kind of, I don't know, check the people who were bothering him. And so he was constantly getting into these issues, and privileges were being taken away constantly, constantly, constantly because he couldn't control himself. And one day the night watchman who was responsible for all this reform, he was walking through the cells and doing some night check or whatever it may be. And he looks into the bear's cell and he sees that he has these knitting needles. And he's like, that's probably not great. Probably shouldn't have those.
That's a weapon,
So he takes them.
right?
Yeah, it's a weapon. And so he takes them, and the inmate is like distraught. He's so upset. And turns out what he had been doing with them was knitting the night watchman a Christmas present. He was knitting him a scarf. And when he finally was able to give it to him, because I don't know if he improvised some sort of knitting technique or what to finish it, because he finished it. I guess both men were in tears.
I won't get into it here because I have a certain amount of credibility that I have to maintain with my audience.
Sure.
But there were moments. There was an episode that we had on here earlier where a nurse talked about being the only thing that got an inmate through a very particular night. My stance is that the punishment was being in the prison, that I was not there to punish them. I was not there to make them feel worse or to disrespect them or put them down. Psychologically, I was in battle with the people that wanted to do battle with me, but the people who were sorry to be there, the people who were not at all used to being in prison, um, uh, I won't say that like I made their lives easier or that even necessarily that I cared for them, but they are in your care when you're a correctional officer. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand. And this story just completely rings true that not necessarily the last part with the scarf being knitted for the watchman, but the inmates are doing whatever they can to cope, to pass time or to be constructive. And very often those things are good and also prohibited. It's not just when they're tattooing hepatitis into each other. Sometimes they're doing good things too. And those things are often still against the rules. And I've had many inmates complain to me that merely me enforcing the rules was depriving them of something that was almost basic or humane or could be viewed that way. And I guess everything's a head game in prison, so you don't have time to sit there and think about, and it's really not even your judgment call whether or not they should or shouldn't have it as an officer. But there were moments of humanity like that very often on the block, which is also why you should watch Shawshank and also The Green Mile. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Can we
no.
watch these movies, please?
I've seen enough. I've seen like the amount of movies I can count on my hand.
All right. You're
That's how many I've
not
seen.
into that. Shall I check out the next picture?
Sure.
Here we have what
So,
we would call a chase, where you've got some sort of ancient tunnel of some sort, possibly a waterway or something, but now you have modern plumbing and heating and electrical equipment going through it. This would represent a retrofit to the prison, I'm sure, because it was around for a long enough time for those things to happen.
so this is down in the basement. At Jackson Prison, the solitary confinement unit was located in the basement. Like I said, it's been completely renovated. The building is very different, but it holds a lot of the same bones that it did way back then. The basement, however, is still remarkably similar to what it would have looked like in the late 1800s, early 1900s. It's dark, damp. I mean, the floors are dirt. You can't see it in this picture, but if you keep going down in that hallway, it's dirt. Um, where these pipes are going through those tunnels, the rumors are, and I don't have any reason to believe this or not to believe this, but the rumors are that the employees of the prison would use them to move through the prison. And then there's also rumors that they would use them to escape, and people had escaped through those tunnels. I don't know if that's true or not. You can use your imagination and make up a story if you want, but
I don't really have to use my imagination. We had many connected tunnels under the prison, both more formal walkways that would connect the buildings underground so that you didn't have to go outside in winter. There were parts of the building that were under the baseball field where the floor was dirt, and when it would rain, there would be a lot of groundwater down there. There are stories of people escaping these ways. They usually didn't connect to anything in inside the perimeter is what we would call it. But um, I was also told by some officers that had worked there in the 70s, this is where they would take someone to beat them up, you know. Uh, no cameras in the 70s. We had decent camera coverage when I was there. But there's a lot of places that are out of sight and out of mind. And when an inmate is being taken there, knowing that there's no reason to be going here, and I don't even want to paint correctional officers as being that kind of person, but it happened. If they had assaulted an officer or something, this friend who told me that, he said the inmates would know what was coming to them, because they had earned it. They knew they were going to get the bat, in other words.
Okay. So, well, ignore that ridiculous skeleton face that exists there. I think that was a joke that someone put up. But this is the basement, uh, which, like I said, would have been the solitary confinement unit. And you can see that it's extremely cramped, crowded, all of that. But this is where people would come who did the worst of the worst things. That gentleman that I mentioned who shot and killed his wife and child. This is where he was sentenced to spend the rest of his life. Michigan didn't have the death penalty. So the next best thing was to say, well, you can spend the rest of your life in absolute misery. And that's what they did. So down here, if you keep going, so when the prison was functioning, specifically back in the time that I kind of focus on, late 1800s, early 1900s, I mentioned that they used the bat, but there were a number of other torture methods that they would use as punishment for criminals who weren't behaving or following the rules. If they were talking too much or if they had snuck cigarettes or whatever it might be. One of the worst punishments for the folks who just couldn't seem to get it together, I guess, was the hanging up method. And that's literally what they called it, was hanging up. And what they would do is they would put the person's hands in these kind of shackles that are affixed to the ceiling so that their arms are hanging, their body is dangling, and their feet would be just like a couple inches off the ground. So just barely. And they would leave them there for hours and hours and hours at a time. And it was, I mean, I'm sure you can imagine how painful physically that would be, emotionally, mental. It hits every box. Today, and this picture was taken about a year ago, there are remnants of that are still there today in 2026. And that's what that is. So that you're looking at there, that would have gone around the wrist of someone, and it would have been further up. I think it's hanging because it's been like 100 years, but it would have been close to the ceiling there, and that's where people would have been hanging out.
It's pretty awful not to be discounted. I'm someone that gets injured just sleeping in bed. you know, 8 hours laying in bed. I wake up feeling terrible. I can't imagine being stretched out, what it does to your muscles and all that. And it was strictly just to get back at them. And I'm sure there's humiliation in that as well, being strung up like that. And the thing is that punishments like these never work. They don't make someone sorry. They just make them angry. They just make them gives them time to think about how and when they'll get back at the staff who do this to them. And so the best you get out of it is sort of a short term controlling the situation, controlling someone's behavior. But long term, you're not going to be making any headway with that person. And I'm sorry to say this, but there are people who are incorrigible. They can't be reasoned with. Their behavior never changes. You can call them mentally ill, but there's also just the criminal psychopath who delights in scheming and hurting other people. And I wouldn't be surprised if they wound up here too.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was used for a lot of different folks. So down here in the just as an aside, just to kind of illustrate the whole thing, the cells down here in this unit were smaller even than what was going on upstairs. So they were 5.5 feet by 4.5 feet, which is, I mean, that's tiny. I can't even imagine. And again, it's in the basement, so there's no light. There's no way to tell what time it is ever,
That
which
would be
is,
very
I mean,
disorienting.
yes, exactly. And it was meant to be. So they've got all that going on. Their stuff was washed even less frequently than what would have been done in the population upstairs. It was incredibly hot. I mean, you go into a basement in the summer and it's stuffy, and in the winter it was freezing. And it's Michigan, so, it's cold. Their uniforms are washed uh infrequently once again, and the rats and the mice and everything, it's gonna be way worse down in the basement, so that's just something that they're dealing with on a daily basis, day in and day out. That's what their lives look like. And it was meant to break them down. It wasn't meant to be a place where they could get better. It was meant to be a punishment worse than death. And that's kind of the question that I ask in a lot of these cases when I'm researching these crimes that happened, and these people do these horrible, horrible things, and it's not condonable by any means, but at what point is the punishment that we're giving these people worse than the crime they committed? Like, at what point are we better than they are?
What point does revenge take over and the system's not even about, I mean, from a practical sense, it's about warehousing them, but at what point does the punishment exceed the crime? You know, what's interesting here to me is you've got Kilroy was here, which I've seen before. So, to not look stupid on the show, I went ahead and just Googled it. It's a famous piece of graffiti and a cultural phenomenon from World War II, with the phrase accompanied by a doodle. It symbolized the presence, humor, and camaraderie of American soldiers, signifying the U.S. troops had already passed through a location. Somewhat ironic here. I wonder if that means that some U.S. serviceman was here, or if it was just appropriated by inmates to symbolize something meaningful for them, or if it's just graffiti on a wall. I mean, I'm someone who's seen penises drawn places, and I don't necessarily wonder what they mean. But this definitely harkens back to another era, because you wouldn't see Kilroy was here in a modern piece of graffiti. Any thought on that at all? Any reason why you took the picture?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I would, like you, you know, you see drawings on a wall and you wonder who did it.
I don't usually take pictures of the dick ones. I like this one for no reason other than, like, architecture used to just employ split levels a lot. You just used to see
Mm.
more stairs places. I don't know if it's that pesky Americans with Disabilities Act, legislation that we have got to repeal Working very hard on that in my home state, lobbying my congressman. She disengages. I'm not a body I'm not a body language expert, but I think that was her way of disengaging from that. But you used to just see stairs more. It was just more common in homes, and even in government buildings you would see half lights like that. This is something I like, as it reminds me of my house. Old growth lumber that you could get a long straight piece of wood. This was cut down from, I'm sure, local wood in Michigan, from very, very, very old lumber. Any thoughts on that at all? Speculation before I move on.
I think, so I think I don't know why I took this one. You got all the pictures that I took, so you just, whatever. But the nail there going through the boards, on the ceiling is pretty common, especially in old builds. And a lot of times you can date the the when it was built based on what kind of nail it is.
Yeah,
And
because
I think all
standards. Yeah.
yeah. So the nail there, although my camera did not capture this at all, and I don't know if I was even trying, but it's I believe it was a square nail. And those are old nails. So you can tell that that's like an original, if not just very early, building.
I like how you notice the nail and the significance of that in the manufacturing, and I like the wood. It seems like we both have an affinity for old buildings, but for different reasons. Here's more of that same kind of chaser he was talking about. We have this exact, they may have moved this from my prison to yours, which would have been a baffling and inexpensive process, but I'm sure that I've been in this tunnel.
Yeah, spooky though, huh?
Yeah, when your flashlight gives out, yes. What you're sensing in this picture is, so when you're underground, it's always cold all the time. Doesn't matter if it's winter or summer. If you're suitably deep enough, it's cold. It's always humid. I don't know if it's because heavier or humid air with moisture in it settles into the ground. That, and when I would be in tunnels like these, something very, very interesting is you don't get radio reception at all, as one would imagine. You're not talking to someone with a two-way down here. But you could be in a tunnel and someone could be 150, 200 yards away from you, elsewhere in the tunnel. You could hear them walk as though they were next to you, and you would talk to them like they're next to you. Your voice would echo perfectly down because it's a perfect amplifier. Your voice isn't being dampened by anything on the wall because it's stone. It just echoes because it has nowhere else to go. It's not going into the ground. So you would walk. I would be talking to someone 150 yards behind me. I'm like, I'm heading up to the officers' mess for chow. Are you going there? And they're like, nah, I'm going to Burger King. And they're more than a football field behind me. And so
That's crazy.
like, I don't know if that was exactly your experience in these tunnels, but that's what it would be like for me.
So the tunnels there are filled with, I mean, you can kind of see that there's a lot of junk happening down there. So I didn't go very far. This was about as far as I went because I didn't want to die. But, I cannot imagine going further because it really was like I talked about the energy of the building and being upstairs, and even with all the light pouring through the windows, I mean, it was suffocating. But if you go down here into the solitary unit where it's cramped as it is, just physically it's cramped. But the the feeling down there, I don't know how to explain it without sounding crazy,
Oh,
but it just
you're in the catacombs. Yeah.
yeah, it's so heavy. And whether you believe in energy or spirits or whatever it might be, you don't have to even believe in any of that to feel what it feels like down there.
I know it very well. And it was also interesting to me. I'm 6.5 feet tall. I literally went to a doctor once who said if I'd been born 100 years ago, I would have been put in a freak show. And I said, that's not nice. And he goes, I meant to say you'd be a football player. And I'm like, well, I could play football now, can't I? And he said, no, because I have stupid hands. But I'm very, I'm very tall. And I do, I'm obviously the product of a healthy diet and vitamins, but people just weren't that big back then. And so, and you'll see this in colonial buildings, that like they thought that the most you had to do was a good 6 feet, 5'11", 5'9", very narrow buildings. Nothing was prefab. There wasn't interchangeable parts. So everything's handcrafted and everything's just made for whatever they wanted it to be. Obviously, this prison was machined and there were interchangeable parts by the time it was built. But my point is that you go backwards in time on how they made things, and you can see how people were, and that's that people were smaller and more slight. And probably one of my favorite things is I was visiting a plantation in South Carolina, and you go into the gentleman's parlor where you can smoke and play cards and talk about how you get to vote and no one else does. And the door to this room is very narrow. It's about as narrow as like what our our little tableaus are of our faces. You know the reason for that? Women wore hoop skirts. It meant they couldn't get in through the narrow doors. Her face is
Oh,
like
you're
she's like
kidding.
bring back the hoop skirt is what she's thinking. So
That's so funny.
yeah, but it was a way to keep the women folk out of the gentleman's parlor.
Wow.
So
That's so
so
interesting.
so form follows function, right? And it's that way at the prison, but it's that way at the parlor. That whatever it is you want it to do, the form follows that. So you should get down
Oh,
south sometime. Any thoughts on this one?
I should. Okay, so this is the door that takes you to if you turn that corner through the door, you get to where the solitary confinement unit would have been. So where all the cells were, that's the original door. And that sucker is heavy. He's it's the one that people would have walked through in 1880, and it's the one you can still walk through in 2026. But it's just a thick door, and I think it kind of gives the impression of the the finality of being stuck in there. The sound of that door closing, I imagine, was painful
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of those folks who are in there.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling too. The big metal door that closed behind me. I mean, that was a similar feeling, but doors are just different too. Like I said, like with that ceiling being manufactured with the old growth lumber, this is the same thing. Most doors you encounter now, at least in the United States, like you're looking at particle board, you're looking at low density stuff because it's light and cheap. And the doors just didn't used to be that way. I just have a real affinity for anything made 100 years ago. There's a museum near me where everything's just handmade because uh, there were factories, of course, but it's like any kind of delicate instrument or something is going to be handmade. This one is an interesting one, worrisome.
Mhm. Isn't that's my favorite. Uh,
It looks like they passed out before they could complete writing hello. Good to be optimistic here. Perhaps their sentence was commuted and they could not finish writing hello. That's what I'm hoping for. Is that the story you're about to tell?
it is now. So yep, that's what happened, and everyone lived happily ever after. It was beautiful, beautiful time.
Turned out great.
No, this is written on the wall in the basement. When they started redoing the building, they came down here and they cleared a whole bunch of stuff out. And when they were doing so, they found this on the wall. According to the lovely lady who gave me the tour, who I love, she's wonderful. She said that when they found this, they did some testing and discovered that it was human blood.
Oh my lord. Of course it was.
I don't know if that's 100% true. I cannot verify that for sure, but that is the story that she tells me. And honestly, based on everything else that I have seen down there and the way it felt and everything I've researched, I believe it.
I'm going to tell you, I mean, I believe it without much skepticism. I've seen things written in blood. Um, I think possibly even more so as a modern psychology. I don't have any degrees or anything other than like intuition to back this up, but inmates hurt themselves a lot all the time. They'll do it for attention. They do it for drama. They do it as a break in their day. They do it to horrify young officers. They do it because they can. They do it because they want to go to the hospital because that's a little field trip for them. I've stepped in a cell where the blood was sticky on the floor and it smelled like pennies. I mean, it was something out of a horror movie. So this is something I believe entirely. And it's the fact that it's still around is shocking, and also tells you a lot about how he felt about being there. But I think this is a sentiment that you could find in any prison, modern or old. And any old prison, I think you would probably find something like that. Here's a postcard that makes it seem nice, though. Nice little.
Don't you want to go?
Nice
Spend
little
some time?
prison. Yeah, I mean, it looks
Yeah.
with the stack running there. It's warm and nice. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with prisons, but they're always near some sort of waterway, and ours was near a it was like an overflow of the river where it was man-made, but it was like cut out from the river, and it would I forget what it was called, but it's like they always have a stream running nearby, which you wouldn't think that you'd want. We literally did have an inmate jump into the water once and went down through the dam.
Get out on your knees right now!
Style of The Fugitive, a movie that you also have not seen. But this is a beautiful postcard.
It is, isn't it? It's nice. And I mean, it's interesting. You can see the walls. You can see those stairs right there on the corner of the wall that would go up. And the smokestacks because of all of the industry and just
Everyone's heated by coal, probably too.
yeah, exactly. So it's very of the time. And that building, the big one. So most of these aren't there anymore, but the big one there all the way to the back with the cute little thing on the top.
Mhm.
That is the building that is still there,
Is that the
I believe.
warden's residence, possibly?
Mm,
It
I
was just
don't know.
even at our prison, the warden had a house on premises. So a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
they get converted into administrative spaces in modern prisons. I mean, that's what ours is now. Ours became the parole office. I mean, but
yeah,
there would usually be some sort of executive residence or something there, or
that's pretty common, yeah.
or what you're looking at is the administrative thing. Is this is a painting, right? Like the smoke I'm looking at almost looks like watercolor. This
It really does, doesn't it?
doesn't look like a photograph.
It's
Maybe
not a photograph, it's a painting. Well, it's a postcard, it's cutesy. Don't you wanna send this to all your friends?
well, as an artist, I also want to paint prisons. I mean, that looks like something I would want to do. Here, of course, is where the bees were kept. Of course, underground, they have a bee chamber for the worst of the worst, where the bees are vigorously shaken to make them as angry as possible. Of course, bees are collected from the secret places where they plot revenge against mankind. They're brought to the prison. And then, like that movie Wicker Man, which Allie has also not seen, oh, dear God, not the bees, with Nicolas Cage. He's in there getting stung up. Is that about what we're seeing here?
Mhm. Yep, that's it. That was what I was gonna say.
Let's go back to whatever this was.
Don't know what this is.
Okay. Well, it's some kind of ceiling or something. It looks like maybe there's been water damage or something over the years. We looked at that.
Yeah.
Here's more spooky. You just know that if you stand there long enough, you're going to eventually see a pair of eyes open up and look back at you.
Exactly.
And then
That
you
was
turn
very
around
much
and
the
you
energy.
lost. Here's a close-up of the hanger on her, the manacle she was talking about that would affix around the wrist. Rusty. I don't know. So please don't make this question weird. So many do when I ask this. You've never worn handcuffs or restraints before. They're very uncomfortable. When I used to teach restraints, when I used to teach in the academy, they would put me into a full set of restraints because I taught them how to do it. So you've got handcuffs on, you've got a box called a black box between those that actually will keep you from messing with the locks, that attaches to a belly chain, which holds it very close to your body. So you can't force your hands out, so as not to grab anyone, not to reach for anyone. That goes in a belly chain around your belly, which is secured by a padlock, like one you'd buy from a hardware store. So it makes you feel weird. And then you've got the leg irons on. I could tell you, as someone who's worn handcuffs, even briefly for demonstration purposes, something we didn't mention hanging from this is going to be painful on your wrist. This is going to cut your wrist up. This is going to make your hand hard to use. You're going to have pain in your hand and your fingers, if not numbness. And possibly like long-lasting effects, like, will I still be able to play the piano? Well, I couldn't before. This type of situation that you're going to be in with this. That's kind of where you can see it. I like the dramatic lighting. This is very Hitchcockian. Here's a nice corridor.
Yeah. Well, we're back upstairs now. So this is just a hallway. This would have been, I don't know, some sort of hallway in the prison when it was a prison, but now it is just a nice place to spend your time.
I can tell you who's in this hallway, and it's visiting dignitaries. It's the governor, it's the warden, it's administrative staff, it's doctors, it's anybody who makes a lot of money. They're visiting the prison, and they're not going down into the belly of the beast, which is where we've spent most of the time. But this is where you show the family. And if this were a facility, a reformatory for the criminally insane, this is where you would show the family. It's austere but clinical, with the nice chairs, the pews, also probably handmade, pictures hanging on the wall, the electric lights. You're going to have to check me on the history on that, but those are probably there from the beginning. Possibly not fluorescent bulbs, but it's a bright, well-lit, happier space than what you see downstairs. And anyone who wants to know the status of the prison, because they are visited often by dignitaries, this is how the prison is, this is how it looks, and this is how things are going. They walk down this hallway and then decide sandwiches and golf the rest of the day, and they never go downstairs. Even today, when we would get visits, they would be shown kind of the best parts, rather than what you're looking at now.
This is back in the basement. So this is a solitary cell. And believe me, the mannequin there is not my doing. I don't think I would have done that, but there he is for effect.
Apparently you can go to a website to find the creepiest mannequins, because how else do you explain the provenance of this?
I don't know. It looks like I took this picture, but I don't remember it very specifically because I was genuinely freaked out the entire time. But it looks like his head is upside down.
Well, his legs being broken and his feet being turned backwards, also a sign of demon possession. Troubling. That's all the pictures I have. I really appreciate you sharing with me. Now that it's too late, I remember that the name of the waterway near the prison was called the Diversion Channel. It was the Flood Diversion Channel. Doesn't matter, other than the fact that the guy that jumped in the river, there's a whole story there, but he slid down the causeway. The causeway is concrete with a trickle of water on it, and I think he thought it would be like a slip and slide. No, he got huge road rash from this. He had many bones broken, and it was very quickly collected. Do you know what the best part about it was? Didn't even happen. He wasn't even escaping. It was for no reason. The guy was already on parole or something, so he technically absconded from his parole in the most physically self-injurious way. Yeah, it's like if he had run away, we literally wouldn't have chased him. So why did he jump in the water?
Why would he do that?
I don't know.
He wanted a little splash, a little fun time.
In the middle of the night, it was too hot, so he decided to go for a swim.
Cool off. I get it.
Prison is just a place where there's infinite amount of tragically sad, heartbreaking, disturbing stories. But I just wanted to end the podcast by saying a lot of hilarious shit goes on here. And although you only felt the negative energy, you weren't necessarily there for the fun times. And maybe it wasn't maybe it wasn't the corporal punishment, but the friends we made along the way. That's probably how most.
That's the takeaway from this episode. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Allie, where can they find you out there on the internet if they want to get more of your special humor and your incredible knowledge and unique perspective? Where can they find you?
So you can find me in several places. You can visit my website at householdhistory.com, and that's where you will see all of my house history stuff. And if you have a building or something you want me to research, you can contact me there. You can also find me on Instagram at Allie in the Archives, and you can give me a follow there. And then also, I have my own show, which is so fun, and it's very different from this, which is why this was so fun. But my show is called Allie in the Archives, and what I do is I take kind of weird cases from history, whether it's unsolved murders or weird racing cars around the world in 1908 or whatever it may be, and talk about them. And there's some nice music in the back, and it's just me telling stories.
It's a wonderful show. It definitely has a vibe. It's more professionally put together than this show. It's something that you can enjoy with a cup of coffee on a snowy day, or as you're doing chores or on a road trip, or under any circumstances. The stories are what drives it and what makes it nice. But the way that she does it is aspirational for me as a podcaster. I don't know if you know this. The way that we traditionally end the show, and this was not my doing. I actually most of the time stand athwart this, and I try to end the show before we do this. I'm against this, what's about to happen. But my podcasting partner, the co-host of the show, typically wants to end the show with a Jake joke. He claims that if people want to hear the Jake joke, that they by scrubbing to the end of the episode, it counts as a whole episode listened to just to get to the Jake joke. So he has so little faith in me that it's a bit of a scheme. So I'm going to go ahead and do a classic Jake joke. Is that okay with you?
I'm so ready. I'm locked in.
Answer format, and unfortunately, you have the unenviable position of being who I normally am, the answerer. So I feel very bad for you. But
I'm very excited.
Question posed to you today is: why don't skeletons fight each other?
Why?
They don't have the guts. I'm not looking at your face. I have to check the reaction. Oh, you're smiling. That's something I never do. I usually react with a quiet rage. I usually am just so angry because I don't know the answer.
I like it. I like a bad joke. Can I tell you one?
I can't get an episode where unless I'm the victim of a joke, but by all means.
Okay, this one is not good.
Are any of them?
Yes. What did this is going to age me. What did Cinderella say while she was waiting for her photos to be developed?
I don't know.
Someday my prince will come. That's pretty good, right? Wait, can I tell you one more? It's just comedy hour with Allie now. Okay. Hold on, I have to remember how it's phrased. This isn't a question and answer one. This is just going to be me telling a joke. I'm at the airport, and there's a woman passed out in the luggage carriage. She seems like she's asleep. Oh, she's slowly coming around now. That's it. Those are my jokes.
I hope the stupid fans of the show are happy because you got what you wanted most. You got a looked up joke by me and 2 authentic dad jokes.
Thank you.
They were much better put together and with better delivery. Thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody go check out Allie in the Archives because you're just you're not going to regret it. It's fun stories and unbelievable true stories and true crime if you're into that, and you can find her there. It was a pleasure to be your producer. I'm sad that I am gone now.
Yep.
But you
You're
know,
out of here.
I'm done. I'm cooked, as the young ones
Mhm.
say.
That
I don't know, but we will catch you back here in the future. Jake probably has an episode coming up soon. I'm always around. Otherwise, catch me on Com Center and the other shows that I do that I'm sure you're all aware of. The other way that we end the show is say goodbye, Allie.
okay, goodbye.